good evening, and welcome into SportsZone. For the first time this semester, I'm your host, Stephen Lucero. I'm joined by Sean Hunley and Adam C. We're going to talk some UNT football today. Obviously, going last week into Texas Tech, didn't quite get the results they were hoping for. Sean, I'll start with you. What do you think went wrong for UNT?
Yeah, a lot of tough plays there. A lot of busted coverage. You know, I would say that UNT they didn't give up, but it was brutal, man. It was tough to watch. You know, I kind of turned it off after about the second half. Before the second half, when they had, I believe it was 35 points in the second quarter. They scored touchdowns on all 3 turnovers. Morris had another 3 interceptions. Just not a good game for UNT. No. You know, it was a tough game overall. You know, not a big fan of how UNT played. So, you know, hopefully they can get back on track soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, legit. I got to be honest. What didn't go wrong in that game? I mean, come on. The running was bad. We gave up 232 yards rushing. Taj Brooks made us look silly. Our passing was awful. You remember the Coy Eakin touchdown over Byron Nelson Jr.'s head? It was an awful game. I mean, saying that we didn't get the result we wanted, I'm sorry, brother. That is an understatement.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, like, I thought we actually had made it a game when it was 10-7, and then by the halftime it was 52-7. Yep. Just a horrible game by UNT standards. I don't care if you're playing a Power 5 opponent. That's unacceptable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we went into this game saying, hey, Texas Tech is struggling, UNT's surging. Can we get an upset? And then at halftime it was made pretty clear that no, it was not in the books. So obviously we talked about defense. What do you think went wrong for the most part on the defensive end, Sean?
I mean, like I said, just a lot of busted coverage. They didn't look like they were having, I mean, not having fun, but they just didn't look like they were ready to play. They didn't look like they showed up at all. They were just kind of stagnant. I mean, a lot of plays, they were just right over their heads. Just like, what are you guys doing out here? It's not like, this isn't football. This isn't fun to watch. This isn't fun for the program. So, I mean, I hate to talk bad about, you know, a team, you know, like UNT, it's my school, but in the same respect, I mean, is there something that went right for UNT? I don't think so.
Yeah, honestly, I don't feel bad talking about UNT in a bad way. Our run defense was atrocious. I mean, seriously, I know I said Taj Brooks made us look silly, but I don't think I can overstate it enough. We looked terrible defensively. Cameron Dickey ran all over us. That's not even the main running back for Tech. We were just playing awful that game, and hopefully it's just one that we can forget.
Yeah. You know, and we were hyping up UNT so much too. I mean,
Absolutely.
Texas Tech almost lost. I mean, a 1-point game to Abilene Christian. Yeah, we're going to go in there. We're going to win. Absolutely not, dude.
That's
they ran
UNT
all over
fans,
us.
man. I'm sorry. We played bad against Stephen F. Austin, in my opinion. Why are we hyping ourselves up?
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to mention too. Obviously, Stephen F. Austin, it's a win, you know, and it's like a win's a win. But at the same respect, you go in there, you know, this is a school that, you know, you're supposed to beat by a lot. You only, you know, you only get 15 on them. So I want to talk about Chandler Morris, because here we go. You know, 3 interceptions against Stephen F. Austin, 3 interceptions again against Tech. He had a great week 1, but has really struggled since then. What do you think, Adam, I'll start with you this time, he needs to do to get back on track?
So honestly, I'm actually not going to blame Morris as hard as I typically would most other quarterbacks, because he's in a new system that's very pass heavy, as well as having 2 injured running backs. Ragsdale's questionable. Price is definitely out for the season. Damon Ward Jr. is going to be questionable for this week as well. And I really just think that we need to get the guy comfortable. You know, short passes, and I have to admit, he does force things. Chandler Morris does have that tendency to try to throw over people's heads. It doesn't always work. And you saw it against Stephen F. Austin. He was throwing over his shoulder across the field. You can't do that as a college quarterback.
Yeah, but I mean, Morris is highly ranked among a lot of, you know, American athletic quarterbacks. I mean, so far he's got 9 touchdowns through the year, and he's got 899 passing yards. I believe that's first. I mean, he's doing really, really well despite the bad game. I mean, and the interceptions, for the most part, he's having a really good season. I mean, especially being for his first year at UNT, especially coming off playing at TCU, you know, had to go under Max Duggan. So I think he's fitting in pretty well. Yeah,
I could see that. A lot of those stats, unfortunately, though, did come from game 1. You know, you had a real good performance there. Do you think he can get back on track and replicate that kind of success?
100%. I mean, he's under a coach that is really, really good offensively minded. I think it's just a tough game, right? Everybody, you get one, but I think going up against a Wyoming team shouldn't be too hard to get back on track, especially with how good Morris is playing right now. You know, the only thing is he's got to watch out for those interceptions, man. He's got 6 through, 2 games? Yep. So you just got to be careful where you're throwing the ball.
And I agree, man. Wyoming is a great opportunity because we're playing a team that lost to FCS Idaho. I know that they're good in Idaho down in FCS. Wyoming can't be losing to them. And I think it's a good get-back-on-track game. I don't think it's a statement win, however, but once we can kind of get the running backs, you know, not being injured all the time for one, and And I think once we do that, we're going to be able to get Morris a little more comfortable when he doesn't feel like he has to force and play hero ball all the time.
Well, not to mention you're playing against Wyoming, who is, the 4 opponents on their schedule so far are 10-2.
Yep.
Pretty good.
Yeah, that's tough. And obviously Wyoming, 0-3 start. Do you think they look worse than they are, or do you think this should be a blowout win for UNT?
I hope it's a blowout win. Again, it's UNT though. I can never tell when it comes to them. I don't care if we're 2-1. It's UNT. We could honestly very well go out and choke the game, but I truly think that this actually will be a blowout. I think we're going to see a lot of DT Sheffield this game. We're going to see a lot of attacking the slot, as a lot of teams do against Wyoming.
Yeah, I certainly hope so, because that's something we just did not see enough of against Texas Tech. Sean, obviously, kind of a homecoming here, family weekend, trying to pack the stadium. Do you think UNT can make a statement, whether or not on the scoreboard, but at least kind of get the fans, get some hope back in this?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think if you go for Damon Ward Jr. and DT Sheffield early, I mean, combined they've got 28 catches, 429 yards, 5 touchdowns. Damon Ward, I believe, had 3 touchdowns in that SFA game, and he didn't have any touchdowns going in. So I think if you get those guys early, if Morris is on a roll, you just got to watch out for a couple of guys right here. Sebastian Harsh, their defensive end. If you shut him down early at the line, you get the ball out quickly. Another guy is Nickel Rook Brown. He's out for the first half, but he's really good. He's got a couple of interceptions for that Wyoming squad. But score early, score often. Shouldn't be a problem against Wyoming.
I agree, man. So I personally don't think this can actually be considered a statement win. Wyoming is so not that great this year that I could never call it a statement unless we win like we did, unless we basically do what Texas Tech did to us, which I don't see happening.
Now, the only thing you got to watch out for, though, they're holding teams 3 and 24 on third downs, ranking 28.2%. I believe it's third in the Mountain West. So, I mean, they're pretty good defensively on third down. But I think if Morris, like I said, just hit those wide receivers early and often.
Hit them.
That's all you got to do.
Absolutely. And also, speaking of offense, I want to take a look at Wyoming's offense on the other side. They are actually not that great. And I think a really big key to victory for UNT would be to attack and attack hard, be aggressive, make them uncomfortable, make that QB not able to throw the ball. He only has a 43% completion percentage on the season. They are bottom 3 out of the entire FBS in points per game with only 11.3. This team is struggling. Go out and attack him aggressively. Don't play conservative. Don't try to get cute. Play your game, UNT.
Especially in front of all those alumni that are coming out this weekend.
Absolutely, man. You cannot mess up this week. All the families are coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully they can pack that Q. It's going to definitely be big for UNT. I want to mention a little more on the running game. We talked about the injuries, obviously. Do you think that there's someone they can look to sort of boost the running game?
So I would want to say Ragsdale, but right now he is questionable. Yep. And I know that Amaji Harris was injured last week, but I believe he will be there. And he had 144 yards against Stephen F. Austin. I think that's the guy you're going to want to look for. Just try to give that ball to him, see if he can make something happen against this Wyoming defense.
Yep, absolutely. In addition to that, do you think that maybe UNT, I haven't seen too much of this, but maybe put on some bootlegs, some play action, maybe even get Chandler Morris outside of the pocket, because he can run if needed. Do you think that could kind of help take some of the pressure off him, make him stop forcing things so much?
I mean, like I mentioned earlier, he's under Eric Morris. He's really good offensively minded. He's got really good rankings if you go back and look at his stats. I think the best thing for Chandler Morris, don't get flustered. Especially up against this Wyoming squad, you're going to be in front of a packed house. Play your game. Do what you've been doing best. Throw the ball and get it out to those wide receivers that are hauling in your touchdown passes. But I think the team chemistry is another thing. They've got 77 new guys on this team. Most of them are transfers. It's the most in FBS. So I really want to see how that team chemistry is going to bond. I mean, you guys mentioned the run game, but I'm more focused on the defense. I think their offense is just fine. So I want to see what that defense is going to do against this Wyoming team.
Yep, it's going to be exciting to watch, definitely. Obviously, UNT students, claim your tickets, show up to the game. But for now, we're going to move from Denton to Arlington and talk some Texas Rangers baseball.
And I'm joining you here today in the Union parking garage. Today we're going to be going over how to drive safely in the parking garage. Let's go see. Oh my God! Oh my God! This girl just got hit by a car. Let's go see what happened. Ma'am, are you okay? Are you okay?
Did you see that lady hit me with a car?
Yeah, we did. I got it all on video.
Oh my God.
Let's go over here and talk about how we can prevent that.
Yeah, not the hospital.
Well, right now we're going to ask you a couple questions on how we can drive safely in the parking lot. What are ways that we can be aware of our surroundings?
Oh, we can look both ways.
Jenna, also, how about putting the distractions away?
Yes, just like our phones, turning our music down, and also not focusing on our passengers.
Where can you get information on how to get a parking pass?
Transportation.unt.edu.
If you park in a garage, make sure you pay on the app or look for further instructions on how you should pay.
And remember, no pass, no park. Let's all try to keep our mean green community safe.
Remember, we're all in this together.
Drive safe.
I'm here to rescue you.
Oh, my friends.
Não sou fácil.
This story is going to be awesome.
Welcome back to SportsZone. Here we're going to talk some Texas Rangers with Jack Shrupsha and Timothy Scott. So the Rangers obviously are, coming off the World Series. They're still the reigning champs, but this season definitely hasn't been what they were hoping for. Jack, I'll start with you. What do you think has been the biggest thing to go wrong for you and for the Rangers?
I think with the Rangers this season, they had a lot of injuries and a lot of inconsistent play compared to last year offensively. They went from being one of the best hitting teams in the MLB last year when it came to runs and such like that. But this year, a big drop off in that regard. And when you have a lot of injuries with some of those big name guys, I mean, that's going to be a problem for any team. So them having to deal with that, that's one of the key reasons they're not where they were at this point last year.
Absolutely. Timothy?
He hit it right on the head. Injuries have been a big part of it, as well as the offense. Looking at some numbers, as a team last year, we hit 790 OPS, 263 batting average. We scored 800 runs, whereas you look at this year, we're down to a 230 batting average, a 680 OPS, and 638 runs scored. So just total drop-off on the offense. And it's not like the pitching has changed. Last year as a team, we had a 4.28 ERA. This year, we got a 4.37. So the pitching's been exactly the same. The fall-off of the offense has really been the biggest thing.
Yeah, I think that's important. And of course, we've talked about injuries, and that's definitely a concern. But, it's not the only excuse here. You can't just say, well, injuries happen. That's part of the game. Unfortunately, the offense has not been what it was. Garcia hasn't been what he was. Heim certainly hasn't been what he was. Leody Taveras. The list goes on. What do you think it's going to take for the Rangers to get back on track going forward?
I think for the Rangers, obviously offensive production has to get back together. And I think they'll be fine with that, but you really got to develop pitching. A lot of guys coming back from the IL pitching, but more importantly, you have Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker, two guys, only a few starts this year, hopefully a full season next year can get them seasoned right and back on track, and the pitching can get better even if the offense doesn't get better.
Yeah, absolutely. Jack?
You just got to get more consistent play, get those star guys back to that form they were in last year. And like you mentioned about the pitching, that's a really big deal. If you don't have good pitching consistently throughout the year, you can't expect to be a playoff team. I think that's really something they're going to look into going into this offseason to develop their bullpen and whatnot. So, I agree with those points there.
Yeah, absolutely. So even though we talked about injuries, and it's not an excuse, absolutely, but it's definitely been a reality. And the big one I want to talk about is Corey Seager. He's officially out for the season, so all these hopes kind of, finally squashed once and for all. But it's been a hernia injury, same thing he had earlier in the year. Do you think his long-term just success is possibly going to be hindered by injuries? I'll start with you, Timothy.
I think yes, a little bit. This year, maybe not. Full off-season to recover from surgery is a very nice thing for him. But most importantly, I think long-term, long-term, he could very well not be playing shortstop for us. As great as he's been there, 2 back surgeries is really hard to go out there every day and play a tough position like shortstop. So I think towards the end of his contract, he could very well be a DH for us.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to mention too. Jack, would you be okay with moving him to first or DH going into next season?
Whatever's best for the Rangers. He's a guy that he's an X factor for them in any way. I think if he's, if he does have to move off from the shortstop position in order to keep him around longer, because obviously him being 30 years old, probably towards the tail end of his career rather than, his earlier days. So if he does become a DH or move him to first base, I feel like he could potentially continue to be an X factor in that way. So yes, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that needs to be explored, especially with the emergence of Josh Smith. Been one of the few positives this season for the Rangers. But obviously, Bochy heading into his last year of his contract. Obviously, you hope the Rangers go all in, try to get another title. I'll start with you this time, Jack. Who would be someone you'd look for them to either add or bring back going into the offseason?
I think the pitcher Uvalde is a must. He's been a guy who was a huge part of their championship run last season. I think if you're looking to re-sign a guy, he's got to be absolutely one of those guys. I think Travis Jankowski as well. I just think he brings a lot of versatility to the team. So when it comes to looking to re-sign some guys, those are two that I would make a point to do. So,
absolutely. Timothy?
I think if you can, try to get Robinson and Yates back. I mean, as bad as our bullpen has been, those two guys to close out games have been rock solid this year. So be able to bring back those two if you can. Another key piece that a lot of people might not see is Jose Urena. He's a free agent this year, but even though he's on the IL right now, you look at his numbers, and he was great for us. He filled in a starting role when we needed him to. He was a great middle relief guy. I think he's a player Chris Young definitely needs to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. And then speaking of Chris Young, he himself earned himself a contract extension just a few days ago. This is a person that came in just a couple years ago and transformed this Rangers team from, one of the bottom teams in the league to World Series champions in just a couple seasons. How much, has an impact do you think he's made, Jack? And do you think this was a deserved contract extension?
I think it was absolutely deserved. Obviously, like you mentioned, I think he really came in and changed the culture of the Texas Rangers organization. I think the state of Texas was getting dominated by Houston for a while. They were like the baseball team of the state of Texas. But obviously coming in and winning the World Series, I feel like he has to get an extension. He's proven that he can win. So I think he absolutely deserves that.
Yeah, absolutely. Timothy?
He hit it right on the head again. Definitely deserved being able to bring in, at first, the offense, him bringing the offense for what it was, signing Seager, signing Semien, and then just in the World Series here, signing a couple key pitching pieces. And so if he can continue to do that and continue to have his front office draft well in the upcoming drafts, I think he'll be a great extension.
Yeah, absolutely. And Timothy, I'll let you expand on that. Obviously, he's built this year by year, and each year, I think we've kind of seen the missing piece of the puzzle. For this year, you talked about the draft. Didn't have a high draft pick like they have in previous years, but you could say they made the most of it. What do you think about the Rangers draft picks?
I think first round getting Dylan Dreiling was a great pick. Coming off his year at Tennessee, he was a key piece for them, great offensive weapon. And I think he'll do great in our system, especially as another outfielder. So to have the young core of Carter, Langford, and eventually Dreiling, I think that'll be great for the Rangers.
Yeah, absolutely, Jack. And then, I'll ask you to extend on that for not only draft picks, but prospects as well. The Rangers, even though won a World Series, they still have a heck of a farm system. Who would you look to down at the farm?
I don't have any particular names off the top of the head right now, but one of the reasons I think Chris Young is going to be such a great extension with the Rangers, I trust in the process and the culture he's made, and some of the guys that we've gotten along the way here this past year or so. Like I think Josh Jung, when he was drafted this past season, or before this World Series season, he's one of the top players in this team now, and I believe in the process and looking forward to see where they will go with that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Timothy?
You look at guys like Leiter and Rocker. They're on the major league roster now, but if you can develop those guys in the offseason, really get them to hone in their games, I think they can be a great middle rotation punch next year, and then in a few years down the line, be a top 1-2 arm for your rotation.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are two guys I'm definitely excited to see. Rocker, obviously, making his debut just last week. Definitely going to see how they can continue to progress. But, switching from the young guys, let's go to the old guys real quick. Jacob deGrom made his return, had a really solid game, but obviously his age, his injury history. How do you see him going forward for the Rangers? I'll start with you, Timothy.
I think for the Rangers, I think him being a starter next year is very plausible, just top of the rotation guy. But his health is a concern. I think maybe a potential move is bring him to the bullpen. He throws gas. If you have him, if you can re-sign Yates and Robertson, that's 3 deadly arms in the bullpen. So long term, you could definitely see him moving the bullpen, but next year, a lot of hope in the starter's spot.
Yep, absolutely. So real quick to wrap this up, I'm going to go rapid fire. I'll start with you, Jack. Who is your World Series prediction for this season?
My World Series prediction, I got the Baltimore Orioles and the Philadelphia Phillies
All
for this
right.
year. So.
And Timothy?
I also have the Phillies, but I'll take the Guardians coming out of the American League.
Very interesting. I will put the Phillies as well, but I think those Bronx Bombers are going to get in there this year. Hate to see it. But obviously, it's going to be interesting to watch, for the Rangers. Hopefully, we can look towards next season. Unfortunately, wish we could have gotten a little bit more this season. But we're going to stay in Arlington, and now we're going to talk about the Dallas Cowboys coming up next.
There's no harm in wanting to have fun while in college, but it's easy to lose track of how much you've had. Apps like Drink Control and Alkadroid can help keep track of your consumption and blood alcohol levels. If you or someone else does drink too much, the signs of alcohol poisoning are as follows: pale skin, vomiting, confusion, low body temperatures, irregular breathing, blacking out, and it's hard to wake up or cannot be woken up.
Dude, are you okay? Hey, what's wrong? Wake up.
It's an exciting time of year, but it's important to be responsible. If you suspect someone is suffering from alcohol poisoning, get help immediately. You will not get in trouble for seeking help if you are underage. For more info and resources, go to UNT's Division of Student Affairs.
Willis Library, located at the University of North Texas. It has computers, printers, and the building is open 24/7. By going online, you can book up to an hour of reserved space at one of the many private study rooms. Many of them are equipped with whiteboards, a table, and a TV to hook up to your computer. Textbooks can be checked out for free with a student ID. They also have many of these in ebook forms. This is still a library, so always remember to be quiet and respectful of other surroundings, especially in certain places where talking is not allowed. For example, the 3rd and 4th floor are completely quiet. As you can see, Willis Library has many options for students, with it offering many media sources and staying open all the time.
Welcome back to SportsZone. I'm your host, Stephen Lucero. I am joined by Rohan Srinivasan and Jay Latham, and we're going to talk some Dallas Cowboys football. Unfortunately, had a great Week 1 performance, come back in Week 2. Doesn't quite hit the same, does it? So obviously a brutal 44-19 loss for Dallas. Rohan, I'll start with you. What was the biggest problem for Cowboys?
Well, for starters, you didn't outscore them in any single quarter, not 1st through 4th. So you're not going to win many games with that stat, obviously. More than that, it was honestly just stopping the run game, really, to me. But more than that, obviously, when you're going into a game, you didn't expect the Saints to beat you. We were favored in this game, right? And I really thought when Lamb took it to the end zone in double coverage, caught it, ran to the end zone, I really thought we would make a comeback from there, but it wasn't to be.
Yep, absolutely. And it sort of flipped the script. The Cowboys came in Week 1 maybe feeling a little disrespected. They were the road underdogs. They beat up the Browns. Now coming in at home, losing to the Saints. Obviously a tough loss. Jay, what do you think went wrong for the Cowboys?
And bouncing off what Ron said, they can't defend the run. This also is what knocked them out of the playoffs last year. Aaron Jones had a field day with them in the Packers, and you can clearly show that they ran the ball right at Michael Parsons, and the rest of the defense had to step up, and they were just pedestrian there, and he just had a field day with them. Also, we have to give credit to Clint Kubiak here. I feel like he exposed the Saints offense to its maximum potential. His father's Gary Kubiak, and as a Houstonian, I know that Gary Kubiak is a great football mind. So big props to Clint there. I think the Saints are going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, in terms of adjustments also, I really think obviously stopping the run, but getting the offense going. This defense didn't give the offense any chance to run the plays that they wanted to run, and therefore they couldn't really have their own time to run through that possession. That 3rd quarter, when the Saints just chewed out the clock, it was absolutely amazing to me because that was the game-winning drive to them. Even if it resulted in a field goal, it doesn't matter, so chewed out the clock, won them the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the running game, I think, that's a big thing that the Cowboys couldn't do. We talked about stopping it. They couldn't run the ball either. Zeke, Dowdle split some carries, but, I think my biggest concern with this is you're having Dowdle do a drive, Zeke do a drive. I think that's just not the way you handle this, especially at this level in the NFL. McCarthy, I think, has got to make an adjustment there. Our best point of the running game in recent memory, at least, Zeke and Pollard a couple years ago, being able to be that Zeke power red zone back. Pollard change of pace back. Yep. Do you think if they can incorporate that type of thing with Dowdle or even Deuce Vaughn, they can have some more success?
So for me, did y'all see Zeke in the 1st quarter at all? I really didn't see him that much.
That's exactly
I'm gonna
my
be honest
point.
with you.
I didn't see him
And
either.
it resulted in field goal.
Yep.
Why did we get Zeke? We brought Zeke to fix the red zone issues. If you can fix the red zone issues, you'll have a much better game going forward. Now, you can rely on your other running backs to bring you down the field. But we got Zeke for a reason, and when it was for him to punch it into the end zone, for him to get 6 points, and that's why we couldn't execute.
Yep, absolutely. Jay?
And I think another adjustment that went wrong there, I mean, you just paid this guy the most expensive player in NFL history, and I mean, he can't take over the ball. I mean, he can't take care of the ball, and this has been an ongoing issue his entire career. And I mean, when he feels like he has to step up and make a play, he kind of falls short every time. So I think that's going to be one of the bigger issues there is that Dak has to take care of the ball, especially when you have a team that's going to limit your possessions with the run game in the New Orleans Saints.
Yep, absolutely. And I will disagree with you just a little bit there on Dak, just because the first one, Jalen Brooks completely fell over. You know, obviously, this is something that we have CeeDee Lamb. You know, he's excellent scoring this touchdown right here. He is that X factor. You paid him, and no one's regretting it. But I'll start with you, Rohan.
Yeah,
Who
sure.
needs to step up beyond CeeDee Lamb for this offense to have some success?
For the offense, I'm going to be honest with you, we really can't blame them. We need to focus on the defense, actually.
Okay.
Because, like I said earlier, when we give time for that offense to drive down the field, you really didn't have that opportunity in that game. In the Browns game, you really did. The defense, Micah Parsons got to Deshaun Watson. What happened this game? Deshaun Watson didn't get one single hit. So hopefully he can do it against Lamar Jackson next week.
Yep, absolutely. Jay?
And I'm going to agree with Rohan. It's the defense that's going to have to step up. I mean, when you look at the run game, I mean, it was terrible. I mean, you want to look at the linebackers who were just slow to fit gaps, and they just ran at Michael Parsons every time he sets the edge like he's supposed to, and the running back just cuts up right there. And I want to call out Demarion Overshown. I mean, you had the potential at Texas. You did great there, and I think that if you just fit, I mean, Kendricks is old as well, but I think this is an experienced duo that could get the job done, and they're just not. And I think the secondary isn't physical as well, and that's going to be a big issue as the Ravens do like the outside zone run.
Yeah, absolutely. The Cowboys defense has a lot to work on, and I think Mike Zimmer is not excused from that either. The one thing I would say to defend DeMarvion Overshown, he only had, I think, 16 snaps on defense, way down from the Browns game. So it's going to be interesting. You have weapons on defense. That's the one thing we can't deny. Look what they did to the Browns. But now you come in the Saints, it's flat. Once again, you're run over just like you did with the Packers. The run game is the big thing we keep coming back to. Rohan, what's it going to take to finally stop the run?
And I really want to point this out. Mike Zimmer here is getting all the blame for some reason. At the end of the day, it's the players who have to go out on the field and produce. It was funny to me how in week 1, the Cowboys stomped over the Browns. No credit was given to Zimmer instead of the players. Fast forward to week 2, no credit was given to the Saints. It was just the Cowboys' failure and inability to execute. And so I really thought that it was unfair on Mike Zimmer. He'll make adjustments. He said that in the postgame. Mike McCarthy said he'll make adjustments. Let's see if they'll do it next week.
Yep, absolutely. But obviously, Alvin Kamara ran all over you. Here he is scoring another touchdown. This is a Ravens team you're facing next week, and I want to get into this. They have Lamar. They have Derrick Henry. You know, they have a running game beyond even probably what the Saints have, you can make an argument. How is this Cowboys team going to step up to stop the run or at least take some pressure off the run game?
I think by taking pressure off the run game, they have to stop. They have to stop the run and make the Ravens pass. And the strength of your defense is letting Michael Parsons get after the quarterback. You have Trevon Diggs, who is just an absolute ball hawk. You want to force Lamar to throw the ball because he has a below-average receiving room. So let's just be honest. Make them play into your strength. Lamar has been, right now, he's been seeming kind of like he's uncomfortable. He's trying to be Superman. He's trying to do too much. And I feel like he's in a similar predicament to Giannis where all he needs left is that ring, and he's trying to force it to happen.
And actually, to Jay's point, I really agree with him on the fact that once you stop the running game, what does it do to the passing game? It makes it a lot more harder, and vice versa. If the running game goes easy, it's much more easier for Derek Carr to drop back and throw up a pass.
Absolutely.
If we can stop the run game, I see us winning this game.
Yeah, and I think that's big. Just playing complementary football, both on defense and, just obviously the entire picture here. But, we're talking about the defense here. The pass rush is what needs, to step up. That's where the defense is at its best. But if you can't stop the run, if they just keep running all over you, you don't get those pass rush opportunities. And we saw that. Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, you can go down the list, didn't get the opportunities they needed. What's it going to take for this defense to force them to throw the ball?
For me, it's Micah Parsons getting to Lamar Jackson 100%. When you have Derrick Henry in the backfield, see, you deal with Derek Carr and Alvin Kamara. These are two better players. You have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in the backfield. You better make adjustments, otherwise the same thing will happen to you last week.
Absolutely. Jay?
And I think you're just going to have to, like, beat up on him. You're going to have to remain physical the entire time. And, I mean, Greg Roman and this Ravens team is somebody who is going to force you to be physical every single time you play them. And as we've seen, Derrick Henry is a second halfback. That's where he's going to get all his yards. So you have to just be physical. And I'm going to call out Mozzie Smith here. He's an interior defensive lineman, drafted first round last year. And, I mean, you got to live up to the hype and the expectations here to stop this run.
Yep, and I'll join you. Mozzie Smith, Linval Joseph, Jordan Phillips, your top 3 defensive tackles are 3 of the 4 worst graded defensive tackles in the entire league. When you can't stop the run on the inside, yeah, you don't have a chance. So obviously talked a lot about the defense. I want to get back a little bit to the offense side of the ball, Rohan, because they were moving the ball last week. I think that's something that you can't deny. They were moving down the field, but they couldn't cash it in. Brandon Aubrey has the golden leg, of course, but you got to score touchdowns. Rohan, what's it going to take to get in the end zone?
You brought it up right there. Brandon Aubrey is my heart and savior.
Yes.
He will save us in every single game. Doesn't matter if we can shoot it from 70. He will make it. But the thing is that really, in this week, I don't think I can blame it on the offense here. Sure, you drive down, you score 3-3-3, but on the defense, if you're giving up 7-7-7, you can't really do anything about that. And therefore, you have to make adjustments not only on the offense, but on the defense as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The defense, it's tough, but the offense does have to respond as well. Jay, what do you think on that point?
Offensively, I think you have to get Cedarian Lamb going early. I mean, this is your guy. You just dropped a bag on him. I mean, feed him. He's only got, 9 catches this year? It's ridiculous. This is a guy that set the franchise record last year with receptions. Feed him. It's quite simple.
Yeah, absolutely. CeeDee Lamb has got to get more involved and got to get involved early. He had that one great pass, but that was about it, in terms of big plays. Obviously, there's a lot we need to work on. We'll definitely have to watch, though, for that. Anyone else, Rohan, that you'd say needs to step up on offense? Actually, we'll just go ahead and say, Dak, CeeDee Lamb, run game, there's a lot they have to do. But we're going to move past the Cowboys, and we're going to move on into our next block coming up next.
What does Talents do?
So I'm the Vice President of External Relations for Talents. That means that I basically oversee all the external committees. Our external committees entail our Model A, it's a Mean Green Machine. So they bring it to football games especially, so every game it's kind of there, every home game. The Model A is like a symbol of UNC pride, and it's a big tradition that we are so lucky to uphold and maintain. When people look at it, they see it, and they're like, oh, that's the Mean Green Machine. There must be a game today or something to ramp up school spirit for basketball, softball, volleyball, any of those things. We have amazing teams, so we just want to show school spirit for them. Bonfire Committee, which is in charge of putting together the bonfire every year for homecoming. It's kind of just a whole semester-long process up until build week that we have to put together and oversee and make sure safety regulations are followed and risk management is taken care of. Cannon Crew, which oversees and takes care of the cannon. They fire it at games, they take it to special occasions.
Did you know you have access to video equipment like DVDs, video games, and cameras? That's right, you do. Come on down to Chilton Library and fulfill your media dream. Located on the bottom floor next to the student sculpture. Hope to see you there soon. Hey girl, you know you look good. I like the way you move and groove.
I'm not sure. Welcome back to Sports Zone. We're going to talk some Dallas Stars hockey. I'm here with Nick Volpetti and Mason Branham. The Stars starting training camp today. Can't believe it's coming this fast, but Dallas Stars hockey had a pretty busy offseason. Some big moves, some big additions, some big losses. Nick, I'll start with you. What was the biggest addition for this Dallas Stars hockey team?
The biggest addition, I would say, is Matt Dumba. He's got a lot of NHL experience. He's been in the league for 10 seasons. Obviously spent a lot of time with the Minnesota Wild. Not very well liked here in Dallas. There have been some beef between him and the Stars. Gets booed a lot when he plays in Dallas. But, I hope the fans can look past that because I think he's still a pretty solid defenseman. Signed a 2-year contract worth just under $4 million, which I think is a good deal for him and for the Stars.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a fan favorite, but we're going to have to get something with the defense. We'll talk about more about that later.
Yeah, for sure.
But Mason, who is your biggest addition?
Mine actually is first-round pick, ML Hemming. He had 7 goals, 4 assists, 11 points in 40 games in Finland's top professional league. He also had 18 points with 11 goals, 7 assists in the TPS under 20. And I think he's going to be a guy that we're going to see a lot this year. Whenever you draft a rookie this high talent, this high round, you want to get him playing time early, kind of develop him a little bit. Not necessarily a starter, but get him a lot of playing time. So I think he's going to be a guy that's really going to help this team.
Yeah, the Stars, they've done a heck of a job drafting. He'll probably spend some time in Texas before he gets caught up to the Stars, but definitely going to be an interesting to look at. Nick, I'll go to you. Obviously, we got some good additions. We also lost some guys. Who's your biggest loss?
I'm going to mention two. First, I want to say Joe Pavelski. I mean, I've got to mention him. He was so fantastic as a Dallas Star. I think he was better than any of us thought he would be. But I think for me, the biggest loss was Chris Tanev. I know he was only here for a short time, but I think that he just brings so much to a team. You know, I think for a while, I thought he's one of the more underrated players in the league. His ability to prevent chances, help his goaltender behind him has been so underrated. I think that's just sort of an archetype in the NHL in general that goes under the radar. You know, we all love the defenseman who scored 90 points, but guys like him are important too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll expand on that just a little bit. Obviously, Joe Pavelski, a guy, came in at an older age, but he really produced for this team. You know, obviously, second half of last season, I think he did start to show his age a little bit. You know, it was time to hang it up, but I'll agree also with Tanev. You got to beef up the defense. Hopefully it's going to be enough, but that's the big loss. Obviously, trading him didn't get as much as I would like to see. Mason, I'll go to you. Who is your biggest?
I mean, obviously Pavelski, you know, he was a big part of the Stars. But for me, it was Dellandrea. You know, whenever he played for the Stars, he played in 151 games, 14 goals, 28 assists, 42 points, had 177 shots. And I kind of think he was one of those guys, kind of like with Hemming, you know, we drafted him early. You know, we kind of wanted him to play a little bit, but not necessarily maybe lived up to that potential. But I think still, you know, he's only 24, so I think whenever you lose a young guy like that, that could be a big loss.
Yep, absolutely. One more guy I want to mention, obviously not a new addition, but Matt Duchene is a guy that really produced last season. You got him off the cheap, off of waivers. You got him coming in, and he really made an impact for the Stars team, and I think that's definitely a big addition, or not addition, but to bring him back. So obviously, you know, that's going to be an interesting point. You look at him, you have so much talent offensively. The defense, I think, has been a little more of the concern. Heiskanen is great, but beyond that, you know, it's a little bit thin. Fortunately, you did re-sign Harley, you did re-sign Lindell just in the past couple of days, so those are two guys you want to lock up. But beyond those three, who do you think really needs to step up on defense, Nick?
For me, I know he just came in, but I got to go with Matt Dumba. I was just talking about how he's a solid defenseman, but in these last 2 seasons or so, he hasn't quite looked like who he once was, and for me, I'm just hoping he can be somewhere in between that prime Matt Dumba that we saw with the Wild and, you know, sort of like where he was towards starting to fall off a little bit, starting to struggle, not putting up as many points. So I just hope, like I said, that we can maybe if he puts up 25, 30 points, it would be good. He'll probably play on the second pair, so he's going to be an important player. And like I said, I know he's new, but I really think he's going to be important with, like you said, with Tanev leaving, someone's going to have to fill that hole, and I think that he really needs to step up to be that guy.
Yeah, he'll be definitely an interesting one, especially Stars fans, obviously not the biggest fan of him, but for one reason is because he's a physical guy, and that's something I think the Stars team has been lacking. Another guy we'll mention that lost, Ryan Suter, another older guy. His physicality just wasn't what it was in his prime. Dumba, see if he can bring in that physical presence. Mason, who else would you look to on the defensive lines?
My main guy is actually Esa Lindell. You know, he just signed a 5-year extension worth $26.25 million. And whenever you have a guy that kind of signs that big of an extension, you know, you're expecting a lot out of him. So I think, you know, obviously in the preseason, I think he's going to be a guy that we're going to see a lot, you know, kind of running around the ice, you know, laying some hits, playing good defense. I think he's going to be a guy to step up. And also, I think another guy that they need to step up is Petrovic. You know, he just signed a 2-year, 2-way deal, and I know he's kind of a little bit on the older side, but I think he's going to be another guy, you know, that veteran presence that I think is really going to help this defense.
But yeah, that'll be interesting. He's a guy, he got some run time deep in the Stanley Cup playoffs last year, so it'll definitely be something interesting to watch. So speaking of the Stanley Cup playoffs, this is a Stars team that's gotten consistently there. They've gone to the Western Conference Finals. They've even gone to the Stanley Cup back in 2020 bubble season. But they haven't gotten that elusive Stanley Cup championship, not since 1999. Do you think Pete DeBoer has the potential to get this team not just to the Western Conference Finals, but all the way?
I want to have faith in Peter DeBoer still. He hasn't quite ever been able to get over that hump. I mean, we saw it with Vegas, too, before he came to the Stars. They were never quite able to get that championship, and then as soon as he left, Bruce Cassidy came in for Vegas and won them a championship. So, I mean, it's almost kind of like Mike McCarthy and with the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, you know he's a great coach, but just got to see that final hump to get over. But I certainly think the Stars roster has the talent. I mean, I've felt that way ever since in 2020 when they lost in the Stanley Cup final, that they've had the talent and the roster. But I still have faith in Peter DeBoer, and I really hope that this is the year they can get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. You spoke to it. They have so much talent on the roster. We'll go a little deeper into that in a minute. But Mason, I'll go to you. DeBoer, do you think he has the potential to get this team all the way to the Stanley Cup again?
I mean, I think he does. You know, this is only his 3rd season with the Stars. He has a career record so far of 99, 42, and 23, including 20 and 18 in the playoffs. But one of the things that I would like to note, has back-to-back Western Conference Finals appearances. While yes, he doesn't necessarily have that, Stanley Cup pedigree yet, I still think with him being able to have those back-to-back conference finals appearances, and like we mentioned, the offense is looking great, the defense is bolstering up, and I think some might say he's not the right guy, but I still think it's a little too early to say get rid of him. So I think I do have a lot of trust in him.
Okay, good. We'll definitely have to see. So, Nick, now I'm going to ask you to be the coach. We're going to look at the Stars' offensive lines for the Big Three. Who do you think they should have starting on the first lines with the loss of Joe Pavelski?
All right, so I got to go with Jason Robertson on the left wing. I mean, we all love Robbo. I mean, he's amazing. Rupe Hintz as the center. Those two I feel like are kind of obvious. Those are probably the two best forwards of the team. And on the right wing, I'm going to go with Wyatt Johnson. I think he's earned that spot. 65 points last year, 16 points in the playoffs. I think he's going to be such an important piece, just like he was last year. And I really hope he can take that step forward, maybe even put up 70, 75 points, playing alongside those two great players, Robertson and Hintz.
Yeah, absolutely. Mason?
Kind of like what Nick said. I like Hintz at the center. 30 goals, 35 assists last year. Robertson with 29 and 51. Johnson did have 32 and 33, but I think instead of Johnson, I think we should put Duchesne in here. He had 25 goals, 40 assists, and kind of like what you mentioned, he was that guy that we got at the deadline. That was a big pickup for this team. And I think, while Wyatt Johnson is a great, he's a high talent caliber player, he's a great overall offensive player, I think Duchesne should get that starting spot. And, throw Johnson, maybe Duchesne, has a couple games where he's not feeling 100% or he's a little bit tired, you could throw Johnson in there. And I think that kind of just speaks to the depth of this offense, to have guys that can come in, replace people that are a little banged up, a little tired, for them to come in and still produce at the level that they need to produce. I think that just speaks to the depth of the team.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to agree with you there, Mason, especially with Wyatt Johnson. Whether he's on the first line or the second, probably they want him in that center position. It's going to be interesting to watch. But you have so much depth on this team. I mean, we haven't even talked Logan Stankoven. Don't forget Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin. You have a lot of depth, and it's going to be definitely interesting to see how they can work those lines. So, aside from that, though, this team plays hockey this weekend. It's crazy to see. It's coming up fast, but they have a game against the Blues. I'll start with you, Nick. Who are you most excited to see out there?
Like you said, it's the first preseason game. You never really know who's going to be in the lineup. Are they going to play the starters, or is it going to be mostly prospects? I went back and looked at last year's first preseason game against Arizona. It was mostly prospects. So if they decide to take that approach this season as well, I'm really going to look out for Maverick Bourque. He's been in the minors for the Stars for the last few years now. I think they drafted him in 2020. He's a player that I'm really looking forward to seeing more of this season. I hope that he can sort of break over that hump and get into the NHL. I think he played in one game last year, spent most of the season in Cedar Point with the Texas Stars. But yeah, I'm hoping he can break through and show something in this preseason for Peter DeBoer and the rest of the Stars coaching staff to believe in him and give him a chance on the opening night roster.
Yeah, absolutely. Rapid fire here, Mason. I just wanted to ask real quick, we got to talk about the goalies. Jake Ottinger, obviously a great player, but he's had to carry a big load. This time, bringing in Casey DeSmith, Scott Wedgwood out the door, do you think he'll be able to be a reliable backup goalie?
I think he is going to be a guy that Ottinger can rely on to kind of be a backup. Obviously Ottinger had a great year last year, but one thing we kind of saw with him down the stretch, he would get a little bit tired or a little worn out, a little banged up, and not necessarily be able to play at 100%. And being able to have a guy that you can sub in for Ottinger, and still rely on to be a great goalie and stop the offense, I think that's going to be really good for the Stars.
Yep, it's definitely going to be an interesting thing to watch. Obviously, Stars in action this Saturday, definitely going to be an interesting game to look out for. But we're going to talk back to some college football and talk about some big blowout matchups.
Ugh, a 20-minute walk? I don't want to do this right now.
Don't worry, you can just use transit.
Transit? What's that?
Transit is a mobile app that provides real-time tracking to connect buses, UNT shuttles, and even A trains. Simply download the app, then tap on the search bar and type where you want to go. In a matter of seconds, you get results for all available routes. And the best part of it is, it's completely free for UNT students. What are you doing?
I'm downloading it right now.
Download Transit today and remember, make life better without a car.
Did you know you have access to video equipment like DVDs, video games, and cameras? That's right, you do. Come on down to Chilton Library and fulfill your media dream. Located on the bottom floor next to the student sculpture. Hope to see you there soon. Hey girl, you know you look good.
I like the way you move and groove. I'm not sure.
Welcome back to SportsZone. I am your host, Stephen Lucero, and I'm joined by Emily Condry and Jalen Bullock. We're going to talk some college football matchups. It's going to be, a thing that's we've talked about, not so much. I think it's big schools paying small schools for wins. This is something that's happened forever. It's nothing new. It's nothing, that's different. But it's here, and it's I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm going to start with you, Jalen. How do you feel about these big schools paying small schools to take a beat down?
I love it. I love it so much. I love seeing such interesting matchups. A lot of the times we go into these games thinking of the underdog. It's just going to go out there, lose by 30, 40. Even this past weekend, we saw a lot of big, top teams like Notre Dame go down with these matchups. I think this is perfect for college football. I never want to see it to go. And it's giving these small schools the opportunity to perform at a high level, face some of the best teams in the country with national level exposure, and then also get paid for it. I just really think that's one of the benefits of this new era of college football.
Yep, it's interesting, but it's obviously a little bit ugly when you see a 77-0 loss. So it's definitely going to be an interesting thing to watch going forward. Emily, what are your thoughts on it?
I would have to disagree.
There we go.
I don't love it as much. I think the reason why we love sports so much is because it is a competition. You want to win, you don't want to lose. And if you're not actually working for that win, I just think it kind of defeats the whole purpose of sports in general. I understand that wins are important for the record, for the school, you want your team to perform well, but I think maybe sportsmanship is a little bit more important.
Yeah, it's something interesting, especially because these are early season matchups. They don't impact the teams a whole lot in terms of playoff stuff like that. But sometimes, sometimes it works, sometimes it goes wrong for the team. So it's interesting. But I'll go to you, Jalen. Is it worth it for the losing team to take those beatdowns?
100%. Let's take, for example, we're talking about a lot of the teams that don't win. But let's talk about some of the teams that have won. Northern Illinois got paid 1.4 to win. Memphis got paid 1.3 to win. Toledo got paid 1.2 to win. Of course, in some of these cases, a lot of these cases, these teams are going in there with the expectations of losing, but the payout that they are getting, in some ways are program changers with the amount of money that they are able to get. And again, as I spoke on, that national level exposure, you just really can't beat it. It's really a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too, especially what you said about the exposure. Even for UNT, just playing Texas Tech last week, this is a situation where they paid us. We did the same thing to Stephen F. Austin the previous week. So UNT is definitely not immune to this type of behavior here. But, it's just going to be interesting going forward. Can this be sustainable, or do you think there's going to be a change, Emily?
I would like to see a change. I think they could keep doing what they're doing, but I don't think it's something that people can just keep doing forever.
Yeah, and do you think it's worth it for the small schools to take these type of losses?
I think yes. They need the money for their programs. So if you're getting paid often millions of dollars, I think, it definitely can be worth it to just lose a game that maybe doesn't potentially matter that much to you. I think, it can be beneficial to their programs.
Yep, absolutely. So UNT, like I just said, is definitely not immune to this. They've done it in the last couple of weeks. So Jalen, how do you feel about obviously coming in? Stephen F. Austin, they paid them to come. They didn't win as well as we would have hoped. Tech, we took the beat down. How are you feeling about it?
So with the Stephen F. Austin game, a lot of things went our way, but there was a lot of stuff going into that Tech game that we could look at. That Tech game was just absolutely abysmal. Losing by 40 points, unacceptable, especially to an in-state rival. Absolutely. But with that matchup in particular, Tech is a high-powered offense. In some ways, very similar to our program. I feel like that was a great opportunity to see what we do well offensively and defensively, but also see what needs work. Of course, with Chandler Morris, he is a quarterback that will have some games where he goes for 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, and then games against Tech where he throws 3 interceptions. So I think those matchups, and to get paid, we got paid, I think it was like $175,000 for that game. I think that is a benefit, especially in the early season and facing a Big 12 opponent as well, a lower end, Big 12 opponent, but I do think that is a good matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely ended up being a heat check for UNT, but Emily, do you think it was worth it?
I think for the SFA game, it definitely was worth it for UNT because that's exactly what we needed coming into the home opener. All of the students were there, the Mean Green Maniacs, everybody was there to support their team, and I think it was really good to see the team, even though, like you said, they didn't win as much as we hoped they would have, but I think it's really good for us to be able to see our team win on the home opener. And with the Tech game, I think it was just a really embarrassing game in general. Whether or not they got paid for it, I mean, throwing 3 interceptions, kind of not what I would be looking for a quarterback, but I do hope it was worth it for them in the end.
Yeah, it was definitely tough because, for UNT, we were talking about is Tech on upset alert, coming in, just hot start, but they, pretty much lay an egg in Lubbock. So unfortunate for UNT, but there are times that this does backfire on the favorite team. We saw it last week, Memphis actually beating Florida State, who they were paid millions by. 20-12 game. Obviously, Florida State, that's their own issue. We can talk about them more if you want to, but yeah, just about. But Jalen, how do you feel about when it backfires?
So speaking of that, we had Berkeley who beat Auburn earlier in the season, 21-14. Of course, that Notre Dame big upset with that. Boston College beat Florida State, as well. When these teams are going into the game as the underdog, the only thing that they have is really to exceed expectations. When you're in that position where all you can do is do better than people think, a lot of magic can happen. Take programs like Boise State, Appalachian State, where their whole reputation is from all of these upset wins that they regularly get, and these are often the best games of the season. With that, even take example the Colorado State-Colorado matchup from this past season. We're going into that game, this new look Colorado was going to blow out their in-state rivals, and that was a pretty good game last year. So I really love to see these matchups.
Yeah, absolutely. Your thoughts, Emily?
Yeah, I think really right now FSU just needs a win on the table. They've been struggling. One of the worst seasons that they've had. But yeah, I think it was really interesting the fact that Memphis, the fact that they beat them. I think that was a really interesting game.
Yeah, and absolutely, because, obviously we see these terrible blowouts, but, when stuff like that happens, it's like, hey, there's something to watch here. It's not always just going to be a shellacking. But, just expanding on that, how do you think, we talked about up here, it's easy to see oh, you can do this, it's worth it. But if we go down to the field level, the coaches, the players, I'll start with you this time, Emily. How do you think they feel about this, going into these games as big-time underdogs?
Honestly, if it was me, I would be a little bit scared. You never know what's going to happen. I guess it depends on what side they're on, but it wouldn't be fun to have to lose a game. And I think the players, being a player specifically, they don't have much of an option. And it has to be tough for them to have to sacrifice what they know to do, which is to win, for the quote-unquote greater good of the team. So I think it's definitely complicated feelings.
Yeah, and that's definitely, just an interesting point there. And Jalen, I'll go to you. Is there, at the same time, you're going in, down, David versus Goliath, sometimes David wins. Do you think there's some extra motivation for these underdog teams?
100%, especially with these athletes, they're competitors. It doesn't matter what school they go to. Take, for example, a program like North Dakota State, an FCS powerhouse, and I really believe if they were in the FBS, they're doing better than a lot of these teams. James Madison made the transition very well. A smaller school, but at the end of the day, they have the talent. And I think when we get these matchups, you're really able to see who are the best guys on the field. And often it is, the Alabamas, the Georgias, but on the occasion, it is going to be a Boise State. It is going to be a Memphis, you know what I mean? So that is something to take into account.
Yeah, absolutely. Emily, I'll go back to you. From a coaching standpoint, how do you go into this game, as an underdog? Do you just sort of, just hope something works out, or do you think there's something they go tell their players to, just give them a little extra something?
I would hope that they would give them maybe a little bit of an extra pep talk going into it. You, as a coach, it's one of your responsibilities to hype up and be there for your players and know what's going on with them. So I think, from a coaching standpoint, it would also be really difficult in every aspect. But I think just keeping your players aligned with what they need to be doing. I think that's the biggest thing you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jalen, how do you think the coach kind of prepares for these type of matchups?
Especially in the day and age that we live in with media, with Bleacher Report, ESPN, when you could hear the noise, there's no way to hide from it. If I was a coach, I'm capitalizing on that. I'm putting every story on the game board. We're going to that game, like, you guys see what they're talking about. We're being counted out to begin with. Going into halftime, hey, we're doing well, but this is what they said before the game, and stuff like that to really get the players riled out. And we've seen teams do that, and where it's worked. You know what I mean? Especially with like programs like Colorado and the teams they face. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is something it's probably not going to change. We're probably going to see more of this, and hopefully, we can see some more of these exciting matchups. But that will do it for us here at SportsZone. I hope you enjoyed our first show. We will be back next Thursday. For now, be sure to follow us on our socials and stay tuned for NTTV Nightly News.